10. If anything, Quothson had grown more unsettling, more unnerving by the time Captain Dumont next visited him. An empty mug and a small bowl of half-eaten food sat to the side where he feverishly scribbled notes. His withered features had become more pronounced, as happened only in the dead as the flesh dried away. He looked even more pale than the necromancer. Now the Vizier did not just mumble to himself, he spoke out loud in demanding tone. Of course! The sign of broker would be inherently necessary there. Any Cretan could see that. Ha! Before entering, Kentrell questioned Gorst, who leaned against the wall just outside the library. What sort of state is he in? The giant had always been untouched by Sin's acrobatic personality, but now Gorst wore a rare look of concern and uncertainty. He's bad, Kentrell. Drink a little. Ate even less. You don't even sleep, I think. The captain grimaced. Not the mood he had been hoping for, although from the beginning it had been unlikely that the Vizier would be any more reasonable than before. Still, Kentrell had no choice. He had to try to speak with Sin now. Keep an eye out, alright? You know I will, Kentrell. Straightening, Captain Dumont walked up to the stooped-over sorcerer. Quoth Sin did not even look his way, did not even acknowledge that anyone had entered. Taking a quick glance at the spellcaster's efforts, Kentrell saw that Sin had filled more than a dozen large parchment sheets with incomprehensible notes and patterns. You're a bigger fool than I thought, Dumont, the Vizier abruptly announced in an even more poisonous voice than previously. He had not looked up at the fighter. I went against my better judgment last time in forgiving your interruptions. Easy, Sin, Kentrell interrupted. This concerns you greatly. Nothing concerns me more than this, the mercenary officer nodded sagely. And that's exactly what I mean. You don't realize just what you might lose. At last the diminutive figure looked at him. Bloodshot eyes swept over the captain, Quothson clearly pondering what value the words of the other man might contain. Explain. Knowing you as I do, Sin, you've got two reasons for doing this. The first is to prove that you actually can. The Vizier sorcerers are well known for their reputations as masters of the art, and your reputation exceeds most of your brethren. Seek not to mollify me with empty flattery. Ignoring the dangerous expression on the bearded face, Kentrell continued. The second reason I can appreciate more. We came to Uri for glory and riches, Sin. My men and I want gold and jewels. Paltry notions. Aye, but you came for riches for a different sort, didn't you? You came for the accumulated magical knowledge gathered in this kingdom over the many centuries. Rare knowledge lost when true Uri vanished from the mortal plane. Sin began tapping on the table with one hand. His gaze briefly shifted to the magical shaft, and then back to the mercenary as if measuring options. Kentrell defiantly met the baleful gaze of the Vizier. Lord Khan has offered you all that you can carry off if you succeed, hasn't he? That would mean books and scrolls worth a kingdom each, I imagine. More than you can imagine, actually, Cretan. If you could understand one iota of what I've discovered here so far, it would leave you astounded. Shame, then, that so much else will be lost again. Spellcaster blinked. What's that? Resting his knuckles on the table, Captain Dumont leaned forward and in a conspirial tones whispered, What could you accomplish if given a year, even two, to further study this collection? Avarice gleamed bright in the sorcerer's bloodshot eyes. I could become the most powerful, most adept of my kind. Jurus Khan intends to open the way to heaven again. He lacks the assistance he had the first time, Sins commented. But I must admit from listening to him that I think he has some notion on how to get around that. I'd not bet against him that once he's free, he will succeed with his holy dream in short order. And with him goes this entire library. Kentrell saw then that he had quoth sin. More than the mercenaries, the Vizier had known that the riches of the fabled realm would only return when the city once breathed life. Sin had not even attempted to inspect the library before coming the shadow because he had known that there would be nothing. The Vizier had pinned all his hopes on the legend, and now that same legend threatened to take from him much of which he worked so hard. So much lost again, the wrinkled spellcaster muttered. So much lost, and for no good reason. Of course, you could fail to find a solution to Khan's own curse, but then he might eventually suspect and send you away. If you try to steal all this. Sin snorted. Don't even blather on in that direction, Dumont. Even if I would stoop so low, there are wards in this library that our good host can unravel. Or else why do you think I stay here, save when I must heed to personal needs? So, there's no hope then? The robed figure stood straight. Quite obviously. You do have a suggestion, my good captain. Kindly tell me what it is right now. A clever mage like yourself could find excellent reason why it would be to Lord Khan's benefit to make Yurei a permanent part of the real world. Quoth Sin stared silently at Kentrell, so much so that the captain began to question the worth of his own notion. What if Sin could not convince the ruler? What if it only served to make Jurs Khan angry at the adventurers? He might demand that all of them be escorted out of the kingdom. The Vizier might be skilled, but against a squadron of trained warriors such as now guarded the palace, he would quickly lose. You have the core of a possibility, I must admit, the sorcerer grumbled, seating himself again. And, curiously, you may have just come at the right moment. Now it was Kentrell's turn to wonder what the other meant. What do you mean, the right moment? With a sweep of one thin arm, Sin indicated the mountain of notes he had compiled. Look there, Captain Dumont, and gaze in wonder. Stare at what I, quoth Sin, could have wrought in such short notice. I have done it. Done it. Done. Ah, I see by your gaping mouth that you've realized what I mean. Yes, Dumont. I think I can release our good host from Gregismonti's foul but quite masterful spell. Conflicting thoughts rushed through Kentrell's mind as he absorbed Sin's announcement. On the one hand, they would have the gratitude of Yurei's monarch. But on the other, that would mean time would be even more of a premium should Khan decide to go on with this holy mission. You've got to convince him to end this quest, Sin. A cunning expression spread across the wrinkled countenance. Yes, and for something far more worthy than your dalliance with his daughter. It'll take me 2 more days of work, I suspect, to be positive of my calculations and phrasings. But I am almost completely certain that I walk the right path. So much so that I'll begin my efforts to turn his mind to our thinking within hours. First, however, I shall need time to clear my thoughts and prepare myself for an audience with him. Should I come with you? This brought another snort from the sorcerer. By all means, no! He sees you, Dumont, and he'll think that this is all for your sake. The lust of one paid fighter does not balance well against the glorious sanctuary of heaven. Nor does the greed of one very ambitious mage. Kentrell could not help but thinking. But Quothson did have a clever tongue when he needed it, and knew well how to deal with those of breeding. Surely he would be able to do far better than a base-born mercenary. Well, why do you stand here, Dumont? You want me to succeed or not? Go so that I can organize everything. Nodding quickly, Kentrell immediately left the Viserai to his own devices. He knew that he could trust Sin to attack this with the same obsessiveness with which he had attacked all that concerned the Shadowed Kingdom. With the endurance and determination of a predator, the sorcerer would somehow convince Juris Khan. Then Captain Dumont could press his own suit for Atana. "You're still alive," Gorse commented as Kentrell left the library. "I think the magic man's beginning to like you." "Heaven forbid that should ever happen. We came to an understanding, that's all." "He's going to try to keep you from losing her." Kentrell's brow furrowed. The giant gave him a Gorse grin. "Only thing make you go to him is her. Only thing he's interested in is magic. Yurei vanishes, you both lose." Even Kentrell sometimes let Gorse's barbaric appearance cause him to forget why he had made the ebony-maned fighter his second-in-command and his friend. That sums it up. "He'll do it, Kentrell. He'll convince Juris Khan." The captain grunted. "You see any sign of Zaida lately?" "Not for a long time." Kentrell did not trust the necromancer on his own. Someone of Zail's ilk could bring out the distrust in the most trustful of people. While he harbored no dislike for the Eastern and actually found Zail's presence more tolerable than Sin's, Kentrell worried about the other spellcaster wandering among the locals. Perhaps it was time to make certain that nothing else happened to endanger his hopes. "I'm going for a walk, Gorst." "Down into the city?" "That's right. If Zail shows up, tell him I want to talk with him." The decision to hunt down the necromancer did not sit well at all with Kentrell. He would have preferred his original plan, which entailed telling Atana of his success with Sin, therefore ensuring some reward with her. Now, instead of the beauticious company of Khan's alluring daughter, he sought that of the dour, formal Zail. No one challenged the captain as he left the abode of Juris Khan. In fact, the armored guards stood straighter, and some even saluted him as he passed. Truly their master had given the mercenaries the run of the kingdom. That made him think about his own men, including the pair who had not yet so far returned. There had been no reports of unseemly behavior, but Kentrell wanted nothing to undo the goodwill they had gained. The moment he touched foot at the bottom of the long winding steps leading down from the palace and entered the city proper, Kentrell found himself surrounded by merrymakers. Under the ever-present lamps and torches, women in bright, exotic garments of silk danced to the music of guitars, horns, and drums. Children laughed and ran between celebrating throngs. A table of local men, hard at work on flagons of ale, waved for the captain to come over. But with a smile and a shake of his head, Kentrell excused himself. There had to be people asleep somewhere in Yurei, but Captain Dumont would be damned if he could find any evidence of that. Several of those out now must have slumbered when he had, or else they surely could not have been up and about at this moment. Some distance ahead, he spotted Orlif and Simon playing a game of dice with some of the locals. Kentrell started toward them, then decided that it was unlikely that they would know where Zail was. Both men had probably just returned to the city after some recuperation in the palace. Leaving the duo to their entertainment, the captain wandered deeper into Yurei. Wherever he went, merriment seemed to be in full swing. The citizens of the legendary kingdom celebrated with such exuberance that Kentrell found it somewhat difficult to believe that this had been the most revered, the most pious of realms. Still, he supposed that they deserved such harmless pleasure after suffering as they had. Are you one of the heroes? Asked a melodious voice. Turning around, Kitchell found himself facing not one, but two enticingly clad young women. One wore a fanciful golden outfit that reminded him of the harems an older mercenary had described to him, while the other, blessed with the curves men desired most, smiled under long dark lashes. Either would have been a prize greater than Kentrell could have ever imagined, but now, although he still found them most interesting to look at, they offered nothing he wanted. Atana held sway over him. He must be, said the one with the curves. She smiled. I'm Zaraya. And I'm Nefriti, added the one in gold, bouncing prettily. My ladies, Kentrell returned, bowing. This action caused both of the women to blush and laugh lightly. A true gentleman, exclaimed black-chested Zaraya. She let her fingers caress his right arm. And so strong. Will you celebrate with us? Asked Nefriti, pursing her full lips as she took his left arm. It would honor us to honor you, said her companion. Yurei wishes to offer you all the reward you deserve. He carefully and politely pulled away from them. I thank you for your kind offer, my ladies, but I'm in search of someone at the moment. Zaraya brightened. One of your friends? I saw two strangers playing dice with some of the men. Yes, I saw them. I'm looking for someone else. It occurred to him that Zael would certainly stand out among the people here. Perhaps this unexpected encounter would turn out to be of some use to him after all. Maybe you've seen him after all. Tall, pale of skin, with eyes more like yours than mine. He would have been dressed mostly in garments of black. We've seen him, chirped Nefriti. Haven't we, Zaraya? Oh, yes, she responded, her reaction almost identical to that of her friend. We know where he is. We'll take you there. The captain allowed himself to be guided on by the pair. He would not have thought this celebrating of much interest to the necromancer, but perhaps he had misjudged Zael. With great perseverance and more than a little strength, the two women pulled him along through the throngs. Zaraya and Nefriti each held a hand, out of fear of becoming separated, so they claimed. The women clearly knew where they were going, expertly turning here and there and moving among the other celebrators with ease. The crowds gradually began to thin, and as they did, Captain Dumont's suspicions arose. He had believed the women when they said they knew where Zael's whereabouts were, and the situation now resembled one too familiar for any seasoned fighter in a strange land. The area toward which they headed looked fairly deserted. More than one mercenary had ended his career with a dagger in his back, thanks to such charming decoys. The holy city Yurei might be, but Gregis Matzi had already proven that even the most devout of lands had their personal demons. Before they could lead him any farther astray, Kentrell stopped in his tracks. You know, my ladies, I almost feel certain that my friend has left wherever you saw him last, and now heads back to the palace to meet me. No, gasped Nefriti. It's just ahead. Not far at all, insisted Zaraya, sounding like a twin of the first girl. Kentrell gently but firmly twisted free of both. I thank the two of you for trying. The people of this kingdom have been most kind. No, insisted Zaraya. This way. Nefriti nodded. Yes, this way. They gripped his arms anew, and with such force it brought a slight sound of startlement from the captain. He tried again to pull free, only to discover that the two women had surprisingly powerful holds. Let me go. He managed to get away from Zaraya, but Nefriti held on as if she were a leech. You must go this way, please, she demanded, kept in place by the one Kentrell risked being snared again by the second. Not trusting that a third partner, this one probably a male wielding a well-worn knife, might not materialize at any moment. The mercenary dropped any sense of honor and swung at the oncoming Zarea. He could have well just struck one of the nearby walls. His fist hit her chin hard, but it proved to be Kentril, who suffered from the blow. Every bone in his hand and his arm jarred. Pain shot through him, and he almost felt as if he had broken one or more fingers. Zarea, grasping hands, came within inches of him, but at last Captain Dumont turned to the side, leaving her ripping at only the air. At the same time, he used his free hand to draw his sword as best as he could. Reacting to his weapon, Defridi flung Kentril back. Caught off guard by her astounding strength, he could not keep himself from colliding with the nearest wall. As the back of his head struck, the world around Kentril changed. First he saw everything in duplicate, even down to two Zareas and two Nefridis glaring at him. Then an even more horrific transformation took place. A nightmare surrounded the captain. Gone suddenly were the sea of torches and crowds of happy revelers, and the magnificent buildings had not only crumbled back to ruin, but they bore a dark stain about them, a sense of foreboding and despair together. Somewhere in the distance what sounded like the cries of thousands of men, women, and children in agony toward his ears. Above, a horrific light with no obvious origin spread its monstrous crimson touch over everything. And everywhere he turned, Kentril Dumont confronted what he could have only imagined were the souls of the damned. They strained for him, hungered for him, pleaded with him. Even as they sought to make him one of them, all looked as if the great beast had sucked them dry, leaving only husks who wished to do the same with the fighter. Eyes sunken in, skin dry as dead leaves, they moved as if they had just burst free from their tombs. In tattered clothing, they strained toward Kentril, mouths gaping in anticipation. "No!" he shouted without thought. "Get away from me!" The blade free, he swung to and fro, forcing back the tide, but finding no immediate escape. A sense of doom filled Kentril as he quickly realized that sooner or later he would tire enough for them to overwhelm him. "Captain! Captain Dumont!" Ignoring the calling of his name, Kentril swung wildly at the fiends. Suddenly they seemed fewer in number and dwindling more so by the second. Hope resurrected. The captain took a step forward, thinking that perhaps might yet cut a path to escape. "Captain Dumont! Look at me! Listen to me!" Someone seized his shoulders from behind. Tearing free, Kentril spun around, determined that if they now came at him from all sides, he would wreak what havoc he could before they claimed his life and soul. "Captain! It's Zael! Zael!" Slowly, the necromancer's concerned visage came into focus. Kentril stared at the spellcaster, both fearful and grateful to see the man. "Zael! Do something! Don't let them get us!" "Us?" Zael looked confused. "Who, Captain?" "Them, of course." Kentril stopped dead in his tracks. The horrifying mob had vanished. The cries had ceased. In fact, all Ure again looked as if it should, and the buildings, the people, and the sky all normal. The inhabitants themselves watched the mercenary with expressions mixing concern and sympathy. However, the two women who had led him into this, he could see no sign. The necromancer quickly pulled him away from the watching crowd. With Zael leading, they headed back in the direction of the palace. Neither man had said anything until they had gone some distance from the area of the incident. Guiding Kentril to a narrow side street, Zael muttered, "Tell me what happened back there, Captain." "I heard your voice and came running to find you standing there in the midst of everyone, slashing with your sword and screaming as if the host of hell sought your blood." "Not my blood," murmured the fighter. Kentril glanced at his hand, saw that he still gripped his sword's hilt so tightly his knuckles were white. "My life. My eternal soul." "Tell me about it. Everything. Describe it in detail if you can." Taking a deep breath, Captain Dumont did as requested. He told Zail about the two females and how they had tried to trick him into a deserted area. Then how, after a curiously difficult struggle with him, the entire world had gone monstrously mad. The necromancer listened closely, saying nothing, revealing nothing with his eyes. Yet despite the silence, Kentrell did not feel that Zail thought the mercenary insane. Rather, the tall, pale figure listened as if he took every single word with the utmost seriousness. That in turn enabled Kentrell to relax more as he told his tale and thus allowed him to recall even more specifics. Only when he had finished did Zail finally question him, and to Kentrell's surprise, the necromancer asked first not about the demonic horde, but rather about the two women. You described the one wearing a revealing golden outfit, much like what might be found in Luco Lane. You also gave ample detail of her friend's rather generous charms, Captain. More than enough detail, in fact, to make me most curious. I'm not the first man to fall prey to a woman's honeyed words, Zail. And they both made it sound credible that they could lead me to where you were. Kentrell's companion nodded. And I'm not trying to insult you. Rather, I would commend your memory. I did meet those two, as they claimed, Captain Dumont. I met them when they were celebrating with one of your men. One called Breck. Breck? Kentrell's episode of madness became a secondary concern. One of his soldiers had been in the company of a pair of conniving wenches who had clearly tried to do away with the captain. As far as I know, he never came back from the city. Neither Gorst nor Albort, both of whom keep track of the others, has seen him since he initially stepped out with the rest. A point to be investigated. One of many, I think. What does that mean? Kentrell cautiously asked. Captain Dumont, it was no mistake that I came upon you. I needed to find you in order to discuss a disturbing encounter of my own. The necromancer frowned. I will not go into my own story now, but I have reason to believe that what we have been told concerning Gregismatzi might have not been the entire truth. Entire? Worded a voice from Zail's side. It's all a blessed lie! Kentrell, in the act of finally sheathing his sword, suddenly drew it anew. What in the name of heaven was that? An unruly and far too vocal companion. To the pouch, Zail added. I'm warning you for the last time, Humbart. Cease these careless interruptions, or I will remove the spell animating you. Humph, came the reply. Suddenly every bizarre and vile rumor that Kentrell had heard concerning the mysterious followers of Rathma seemed to come true. He backed away from Zail, disregarding the fact that the necromancer had only been an aid to him so far. Captain, it's not necessary. Keep back from me, spellcaster. What is that in there? A familiar? Zail glanced with annoyance at the pouch. Much too familiar at times. Humbart forgets his place in the danger he presents to me every time he feels the need to voice his opinion. Humbart Wessel? What remains of me, lad? Listen, as one old soldier to another... Silence. The necromancer rapped hard on the side of the pouch. To Kentrell he said, Captain, I've lived near the ruins of Uri most of my life. I watched and waited for it to appear as we now know it, but never did the right conjunction of shadow and light bring it back. Yet that does not mean that I did not have any success during my quest in the meantime. He reached into the bag. One day, I found this. The empty eye sockets of a battered skull stared unblinking at Kentrell. The jawbone was missing, and some of the upper teeth had been broken. Near the back of the cranium, a great crack indicated a likely blow, either intentional or accidental. He could not say. The final remains of Humbart Wessel, Zael quietly announced. Soldier, mercenary, adventurer. And the last man to see Gregis Matzi before he vanished into the Shadowed City to try to complete his foul plan. From the direction of the skull, a hollow and exasperated voice retorted, Old Gregis would have never harmed another soul. Kentrell barely held onto his sword. He had known that Zael's kind could raise the spirits of the dead, but a talking skull was just a bit too much even for the hardened soldier. What are you up to, Necromancer? What's your plan? With a frustrated sigh, Zael answered, My plan is to find out the truth, Captain Dumont, as it relates to the balance of the mortal plane. In attempting that, I went to go search for something and used to summon the spirit of Gregis Matzi, so that I could perhaps find some way to help break his spells. And did you? The sound of revelry passed nearby. Quickly putting the skull back into the pouch, Zael waited until the merriment faded away. Then, beckoning Kentrell to look toward the mirror, he continued, In the mountainside sanctum once used by the sorcerer, I retrieved that which I could use to call him back. I cast a spell that I have cast 100 times and more, all without failure. His countenance grew grim. This time, though, no shade from beyond answered. The captain found this entirely unimportant. So you failed at last. One dead man escaped your power. He escaped because he was not dead in the first place. Zael let his words sink in. Kentrell frowned, not certain he understood, and if he did, not certain that he wanted to know such news. But Juris Khan told us plainly that he and Matzi fought, and after Matzi trapped him, Khan still managed to destroy the villain before any further harm could be done to Yurei. The shadowy spellcaster nodded sagely. Yes, Juris Khan did say that. Then Gregis Matzi is dead. He is not. I know this. The only reason for my failure is his continued life. Sheathing his sword at last, Kentrell turned toward the palace. Sudden fear for Atana had replaced his uncertainty about his own sanity and even his distrust of the necromancer. We've got to warn them. There's no telling where Matzi might be. Zael, however, clamped a slim but strong hand onto the mercenary's shoulder. Leaning near, he whispered, There is. And I have performed that spell. Gregis Matzi is still in Yurei, Captain. His gaze also shifted to the grand structure atop the hill. And I fear that he is in the palace itself.